Okay, so hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to spend this evening with you. I am Martha Montiel, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Shanda Aiken. If we ever
Hello.
get in trouble, blame Shanda. She's the
Mm.
one, the troublemaker. Together, we're the co-founders of Outdoor Photo Alliance and Horizons Photo, and your hosts for today's webinar. Before we dive in, we want to say a big thank you to Pictureline, the title sponsor for the upcoming Horizons Conference and today's
Yay.
webinar. And we're also incredibly grateful to our amazing speakers that we have today here for giving us you guys time and giving up the game, Brooks. So we're really thankful for you guys, for generously sharing your time and insights. We have Derek Sturman. He's a talented and fast rising photographer with a fresh perspective. We have Beth Bulow, who finds abstract beauty in everyday life. We have Brooks Jensen. He's a fine art photographer, publisher, and owner of Lenswork magazine. And we have Cole Thompson, a master of black and white photography and the co-host of the Cole and John photo show on YouTube. And if you guys are not watching that, you're missing out. You really got to watch it. It's funny. Um, so each of our speakers are going to share their creative insights, their thought process, inspiration, and some techniques that have shaped their work. I'm going to be the moderator today, and Shanda is going to be keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A. So she's going to keep us organized. So please say hello, let us know where you're coming from. And when you have questions, put them on the Q&A and she will share them with the speakers at the end of each section. And finally, we have Dave Worth from Pictureline, who's joining us today. Thank you again for sponsoring our conference. And so with that, let's get started. You guys didn't come here to listen to me talk, right? So Dave, take it away.
Hey, I just wanted to say, hey, we're grateful to be part of Horizons, and we feel like this is a great event, and we're excited to be in Durango area this fall. We're all gonna be there to take pictures. We might as well be there for a conference as well, and it's a great experience, and we're looking forward to it. So, just a little detail: Pictureline is we've been around for 35 years, and we are based out of Utah, out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And with that, I don't want to spend any more time. I'm going to just introduce Derek. Derek is a local photographer here to Utah and a customer of Pictureline. And one thing that you don't know about Derek is he can't decide on a system whether it should be Nikon or Sony, so he just mixed them both and uses a Nikon body with a Sony lens. He's a great person and just as I've been on different activities and workshops with him, and he just is the type of person who who meets people and connects and just is a wealth of information. So with that, I'm going to just pass over to Derek.
Well, thank you. That was awesome. He's definitely right. So some of you probably won't like me very much after this. I do shoot Sony right now, so we'll see if that changes. But I do have Nikon as well. But I've been, Nikon, I've been Sony, I've been Canon. So most people know me for astrophotography, taking pictures of the Milky Way, and that's kind of what got me into all of this. What really started this whole thing for me. So, and I've met Shanda. I ran into her, and I've ran into quite a few of you actually in Colorado at different times. I ran into Dave. I've run into each of you at some point in Colorado, and it's one of my favorite places to be. So I'm really excited for this fall. So I'm going to talk to you tonight a little bit about something I don't think many people think applies to landscape photography and astro landscape photography. So when I first got into photography, I kind of got into it on accident. I bought a camera to do video work, and I realized very quickly that making videos required people. You need everyone on board with your plan. And it was very hard for me to get everyone to be 100% on board with my plan and do it the way that I wanted to do it. And that kind of drove me crazy. I didn't like relying on other people. So I got a camera so I could kind of do things on my own. Started experimenting with astrophotography. And that's kind of where I learned the exposure triangle, was taking pictures at night experimentally. So I started out without using much light. And so I kind of came from the opposite side of the spectrum. I think most people start on with photography, which is shooting in the daytime where you have a lot of light. So something that I learned very quickly is light is important. And I didn't know that when I first started. It was hard for me to get good photos. It was hard for me to get good night photos because I didn't understand that I needed more light for my photos. So right now I'm actually filming with a studio light. And one of the things that you look for in a studio light is something called CRI. Some of you probably know what that is. It's color rendering index. So when you are visualizing colors, there's actually a percentage of colors that are rendered based on the light that's hitting it. At nighttime, you have very limited light to work with, and your color rendering index can be very low if your exposures aren't long enough. I'm going to share a photo with you guys right now. So let's go ahead and share this one. You guys can all see that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a photo taken in Colorado at night, and the way I was able to get the foreground to actually have the color and the detail that it has was by shooting two separate exposures. When I first started, I was always trying to do single exposures to make things work, and that was very hard. It was very hard to make anything work properly. What I discovered very quickly was that even if I did get a clean single exposure, my color rendering index, the actual number of colors that I was capturing with my camera, was very low because the camera was not being exposed to enough light or sufficient quality of light. So now what I will do is, this is two images. There's one single exposure here for the sky, and then there's one single exposure for the foreground, which is a much, much longer exposure, which allows that starlight to kind of illuminate the foreground and give it more detail and more color. What's really bizarre about starlight, most people probably wouldn't think this, but it actually does produce a significant number of colors. The way CRI is measured, the sun is considered 100 CRI, and usually when you're looking at other, that means it produces 100% of known colors. When you look at actual studio lights, you're typically looking for a high rating, like 95 or something, that it produces enough of those colors. So at night, obviously, you're going to have trouble producing enough colors. That's why you have to rely on a long exposure where all of that starlight kind of washes over your foreground over time. You start collecting more of that light. Not always guaranteed to be the best. You might have a cloudy night. You might have other interferences. You guys can see there's some light pollution happening here in the distance. There were some really obnoxious campers here, but we were able to work it out and get our shot. So I'll go ahead and share one more image here with you guys. And then I'll be done so we can move on to somewhat a little bit more exciting. Enough with the nerdy stuff. Let's see if I can get it to work.
Yep.
Is it
It's
working?
showing.
Okay,
It's good.
perfect. So yeah, this is another example of an image where I had to use longer exposures to get the foreground of the image. So your camera will pick up lots of colors in the night sky. This is a phenomenon called air glow. And then you've got, of course, the Milky Way here arching over. The foreground is totally separate, longer exposures in order to make them cleaner. This is probably the simplest but the most effective technique that I teach people to help them get cleaner astrophotos. Usually when you're taking photos at night, it's hard to get the foreground and the sky perfectly exposed in both. So we'll go ahead and we'll shoot a pano, and then we'll go back and we'll shoot a second pano for the foreground specifically, and then merge them. So that's kind of my secret to taking astrophotos and how I get those foregrounds. And that CRI is something that I don't think many people consider, but you'll definitely notice it when you go out and you shoot. Now, if you're shooting at different hours of the day, you'll notice the light quality and the amount of light changes the way you're even able to manipulate your raw files later. So that's kind of my theory and how I've worked around shooting astrophotos for so long.
Awesome.
Very
Thank
nice.
you. Do we have any questions? I have a question while Shanda gets see if there's any questions. On the first photo, there is like that little reddish pinkish light that was kind of like strange. What was that?
So that is a phenomenon called air glow. And I
Oh.
won't waste your time trying to incorrectly tell you how it happens, but if I remember correctly, it has something to do with charged particles in the atmosphere releasing energy. So you might want to look it up. I've covered it before in some classes and stuff that I've taught, but for some reason I can never remember the exact science. But this is a phenomenon called air glow. Many people misinterpret as being the northern lights, but it can actually be captured anywhere in the United States. You don't have to be very far north. And a lot of times it only shows up on camera. You can see it with your eyes, but it will appear almost gray. And then you'll
Mm.
get color on camera, green, pink, magenta, in some cases, purple.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. We do have a couple questions for you, Derek. The first one is approximately how long were the foreground exposures?
Very, very good question. The longer the better. It gives you the ability to use a lower ISO and a higher aperture. I'm typically using about 8-minute exposures just because I don't want to sit there for longer than 8 minutes. But I'll stack 8-minute exposures. So I'll take an 8-minute exposure, I'll take an 8-minute exposure. One thing to consider is if you shoot longer than 10, 15 minutes, you're going to start to get hot pixels most likely. Not always, but it's just a common thing with most cameras. If you shoot for a really long time, 15, 20, 30 minutes, you also risk, a car coming by or the camera getting bumped or something like that. So I go right to 8 minutes. I'll take 5 or 6 8-minute shots. And then if I need to, I'll stack them.
Okay, we have one more. Loretta's asking for the arch Milky Way. What time of year was that? Was it around May, do you think?
Excellent question. If I remember correctly, that's April. March, April, May in Utah and Colorado is a really good time for those arch panos. If you start doing them later than that, so June, July, August, you can do them, but the Milky Way is higher in the sky, so you're going to need more images. So that was a 4-image pano. In July, like right now, you'd probably need a 7 or 8 image pano, I would guess, to get all the foreground as well.
Awesome. We have one more. Janet wants to know, how do you use CRI light in your process?
Most of the time, it has more to do with my actual commercial work that I do full time. So I'm, doing a lot of automotive stuff. I'm doing product stuff, and CRI is a common issue. But learning that on the commercial side, as I've done work, I figured out that it makes a huge difference. So with night photography, people often get discouraged because they'll go out on a bad night. Same thing if you get, skunked out on a sunset and you just get a bad sunset shooting landscape photography. Everybody knows that just as part of shooting landscapes. That can happen with shooting astro, where you have a cloudy night, or even sometimes atmospheric haze, smoke from smoke from wildfires can cause those issues. And oftentimes your colors will be a little bit off, everything will be a little bit fuzzy. So it's definitely good to just know that certain types of weather environment, even astronomical events, can affect your output for your image. And so some nights might just be a bad night to shoot. The other thing that's important is collecting more starlight. So it's too hard to predict, what color you're going to get from each star, but the longer your exposure is happening, the more starlight actually starts to illuminate your foreground, and you get a better overall CRI. If that makes sense. You're collecting more of those colors, more of the light over time, and then you get a better chance of having that cleaner, better CRI rating on your foreground.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Derek is going to be at the Fall Photography Conference and talking a little bit more about this stuff in depth. A lot of the simple tricks to make it easier to deal with such low light situations. So I know that he'll be diving deep into that at the conference. We'll have one last question for you before we go on. This one might be a little bit of a longer answer, but if you can
I'll try
fairly
and keep it
quick.
short.
How do you shoot a panorama?
Super quick. The way you would shoot a panorama, you shoot it vertically is the easiest way, and I would use a wide angle lens. 14 millimeter would be my go-to. You're going to start by looking through the camera, and you're going to identify a star in the top right corner of your frame, or if you're starting on the right side, top left corner. You'll shoot your first exposure, and then you'll move the camera so the star is in the center, capture your next exposure, move the camera so the star is in the corner. Those of you who know wide angles, I know what you're thinking right now. You're going to have distortion. Yeah, I'm planning on that. The idea is that the star is distorted on the left side. You capture the middle image as a backup. Then the star is going to be distorted on the left side. That's just making sure that you don't miss anything. And then typically Milky Way panos are about 4 images if they're done the right time of year.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have any more questions?
That's it.
All right. So thank you, Derek. That was fascinating.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to take your classes because I usually have like, nope, done, out. I need to sleep. All right, Beth, you are next.
This is under the category of now for something completely different. And
That's the fun
and
part, right?
I know that's the fun part. We get so much
Mhm,
variety here.
mhm.
And I have to say quickly to Derek that I'm slightly disappointed because I thought I saw Northern Lights once, but now I'm thinking it was air glow, you said. I'm like, oh man.
Mm.
So the Northern Lights are still on the bucket list. So thanks for bursting my bubble, but that's okay. Oh, so anybody who might be familiar with me and my work and what I like to talk about knows that I tend to focus a little bit more on the inner landscape before talking about the outer landscape. And so that's the approach I'm going to share with you tonight. And what I'm going to suggest here, and you can already tell from my slide, might seem a little bit contrarian because all of us here are likely wanting to produce images that are amazing or fabulous in some way, whether that's the story they tell, or the composition, or the technical aspects, or the emotion, or how they reflect the experience that we had in making them. And I'm guessing if I were to ask all of you all, what is your hope for your images? No one would say, I just want to be average. We all hope when we go to a conference such as Horizons, or we go to a workshop, and we go out with our cameras and we're taking images, that when we get home, we will have not just a few usable images, but we'll have some fantastic images. And we're hoping for photos maybe that will get attention on social media, or that might sell at an art show, or even win a competition if you are entering those things. So the thing is, there's nothing, and I want to be clear about this, there's nothing inherently wrong with working to create amazing images. We all want to be proud of what we produce, and we see making better images as part of our progress. Like, we can tell we're getting better because our images are getting better. And there is tremendous value in releasing that pressure to be amazing, and instead embrace being average as a necessary step in your creative process. And so, my invitation to you, and I'm going to share an example of this. What if the next time you go out photographing, whether that's tomorrow or next week or October in Durango, you decide that being average was the goal, at least in the start? And I'll tell you how this worked for me. And my hope is that my story encourages you to give this a try. So last summer, I took a workshop with TJ Thorne in Olympic National Park. Now, TJ loves that park, and he makes amazing woodland imagery. If you're not familiar with TJ's work, I highly recommend looking it up. And so, in the spirit of pushing my own creativity while I was there at this workshop, at least that's what I told myself, that it was about creativity, not ego. Of course, not ego. Um, I placed some sort of self-imposed pressure on myself to create my own amazing images. Like, I felt like the bar was up here and I needed to meet that bar. I paid money to be there. I set aside the time. I'd expended a lot of energy to make it happen. And so I was kind of attached to making art with a capital A. But in a twist that surprised me, it did not take long before I felt stuck. And I felt overwhelmed. And this is going to sound sort of sacrilegious to all of us who love nature and woods and being out in the forest, but I was overwhelmed because of all the green. It was just so much green. And I started feeling resistance to like pressing the shutter because the woods felt so chaotic and so monochromatic in their greenness. And so I felt like whatever images I take, they're going to be terrible. So my ego is saying better not to try, and just imagine what I could do if I really wanted to, instead of pressing the shutter and creating evidence that I really was a terrible photographer. That led to me deciding I was going to let myself take horrible photos. Here are some examples. These are just a spattering of probably hundreds of horrible photos that I took on that first day and a half. I look at these, and a year later, I have a vague memory of my intentions, but in some ways I look at them and I think, what on earth was I thinking? But the point is that I really wasn't thinking anything except creating space to take those bad photos so that I could just get my creativity moving, just like break the spell of getting stuck and start moving things into a more meaningful direction. The best way I can describe it is like I'm sweeping out the cobwebs that and reminding myself that just because I take a few bad photos does not mean that I'm a bad photographer. And so once I stopped looking for the epic and I settled on the average, I started seeing more. Funny how that works. I gave myself permission to photograph anything that captured my eye without judgment and without thinking about whether it was going to result in a meaningful or even a useful image. So in this case, like I said, I noticed all that green. So when I slowed down and just let my whatever caught my eye capture me, or as John Barclay would say, what does he say? Cole, you're going to have to help me. Taken by, whatever I was taken by. I noticed this gold in the berry, and then I started noticing fern leaves on the forest floor and becoming sort of fascinated with the way they were curling and the way they were shaped and how they were interacting even with each other. And so it wasn't until maybe the final 24 hours of the workshop that my feelings of being stuck eased after I moved through the horrible and I moved through the below average. And then I started being able to see in a way that was meaningful for me. And when I released that and I released the ego, I freed myself up to make choices that helped me to actually see better. One thing that was really helpful was putting my camera settings in monochrome. As long as you're shooting in RAW, you will get both. You'll see the monochrome, you'll see the black and white, but you will also have the color file. So you're not losing any data that way. You're not losing any pixels. But in looking through the viewfinder and seeing everything in black and white, all that green that I felt like I was drowning in, it was stripped away. And I could just focus on the lines and the light and the shadows and the textures. And so I'm hoping that what's clear here is that there's power in making a practice of being average. When we do that, we release our expectations and pressure and just become present to what's in front of us. And we enter into a partnership with our inner and our outer landscape as it is. And so this is something that you can practice now. You don't have to wait until October. Wherever you live, I don't care if it's epic, I don't care if it's boring. You've got trees, flowers, fences, buildings, fountains, all of those hold possibility. And so practice releasing judgment of what you see as good or bad or interesting or mundane or cliche or over photographed. Make it really simple. If it catches your eye, press the shutter. Don't try to make art, just capture it and be average. And then once you get that initial, click or two out of the way, lean in a little bit more and think about what specifically caught your eye. And then capture that. And then what about that is compelling to you? Capture more of that. And so you get the picture. Decide that it's okay to be average and to have fun with it. There's no pressure, there's just play. Relax and reconnect, in many cases with the joy that you feel when you have your camera in your hand and you're absorbed and connected to possibility. And let that intention guide you on the path from average to above average to amazing. And so I am excited, and I really hope to see both your average and your amazing photos when we see you in Durango in October. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Beth. Man, your average is like above average. What's that last one? That last image on the colorful one, was that like a multiple exposure?
Yes, yeah, that's one thing again, like starting to free myself up to play with. I tend to like to do a lot of multiple exposures. So these were less abstract than I usually do, but I still find great value, especially in terms of breaking out of getting stuck in doing abstracts, mixing it up, trying different techniques, and like I said, just playing.
Mhm. It's amazing. Shanda, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Shanda, you're muted.
Yep, got it. I have one question right off for you. Is this something that beginners and professionals and everything in between, is this a mindset that anybody can have and use?
Absolutely. And for that I would even defer. I would ask Brooks and Cole and Derek and you know, like, do you ever find yourself stuck or you know, overwhelmed by the scene or something, and um finding a way to sort of back away from any pressure that you might be feeling, whether it's implicit or explicit. So I'm kind of turning it back to them, but I think I don't think that professionals and people who've been doing it for a long time are immune to this kind of phenomenon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Shanda, do we have any questions?
Do we have any other questions, folks?
I mean, I do have a question. I was going to mention, well, you see that that happens to me a lot, Beth. I went to Olympic National Park and I went to Tofino Island, and I was overwhelmed by the greenery actually and the beauty, and I wanted to capture. I had a vision, but I couldn't figure out how to make a not a chaos of whatever it was there. So it's hard. So you're gonna have to kind of step back, slow down, and then just like, okay, to mess up.
Yeah. And to release those expectations. And I sort of can't emphasize enough how helpful it was to put my camera in monochrome. And I think even though we're going to Durango and there's going to be beautiful fall colors, even that could get overwhelming. And so to be able to strip that back as you're looking at things, it really helps to simplify and clarify. And I see things that I miss otherwise. So I think it's a super powerful technique.
Yes, for
Awesome.
sure. Okay. Well, I
Okay.
guess if we don't have any more questions, we're going to take it over with Brooks.
I'm
Sen?
looking for something that I want to respond to Beth
Oh,
about.
okay.
Would it be okay if Cole goes before me while
Yeah,
I
for
search for
sure.
this on
Yeah.
my computer? Is that
Yes.
okay, Cole?
Yeah.
You
Oh,
bet.
cool.
You bet.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you, both of you guys. That was a good presentation. Let me share here. PowerPoint. No, that's not it. Shoot. There it is. You guys got the right screen?
It says
I think so.
disclaimer.
Okay, disclaimer. I'm gonna
Okay.
borrow a thought from The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Nothing I say today can be proven to be true, but it has been my experience. And what I'd like to do is share with you my photographic evolution. And you'll notice I am quite old, but I am not nearly as old as Brooks Jensen. He is much, much older than me, as I recall, by several months. I divide my photographic life up into 3 periods. The first 5 years, age 14 to 19, childlike creativity. I self-taught. I didn't know what the rules were. I didn't know what I was supposed to do or what I wasn't supposed to do. And it was a wonderful period. But then I wanted to become a successful photographer. And I began imitating and doing what everyone else did. And it was a miserable 30-year, well, I call it a creative wasteland. Believe it or not, I have not saved a single image from that 30-year period. And then there's the last 20 years of a newfound creativity. And based on those 55 years of photography, here's my very best advice on how to become more creative. And it has nothing to do with cameras or gadgets or software or plugins or AI or photographic techniques. It has nothing to do with some new photographer or old one that you should emulate. And it has nothing to do with location. It is simply learn to see for yourself. Now, some people have asked me, well, how else would I see? Well, I got to tell you, for 30 years, I saw through the eyes of Ansel Adams. I saw through the eyes of my mentor. I saw through the eyes of the rules. I saw through the eyes of Instagram. I saw through the eyes of what would get me into lens work. And I photographed like that for 30 years, not knowing what was wrong or how to solve it, until one day in 2004, I attended Review Santa Fe. And I was showing my work to these experts in the field, gallery owners, publishers, and I felt certain I was going to be crowned the next Ansel Adams heir. I was certain of it. And I got to the last reviewer of the day. He looked at my work very briefly and then brusquely pushed it back to me and said, "It looks like you're trying to copy Ansel Adams." And I said proudly, "I am. I love Ansel Adams' work." And he then said something that would change not just my photography, but actually my entire life forever. He said, "Ansel already did Ansel. What can you do that exhibits your unique vision?" That set me forth on a 2-year journey to understand what was this vision he spoke of, and more importantly, did I have one? And after it took me 2 years, 2 incredibly hard, long years, but after I found my vision, I then could stand before a scene and see through my own eyes. So, vision, what is it? Is it a style that you develop? Is it a look or a technique? Is it a creative talent that you're born with? Is it something that some people have and others do not? Well, it turns out that it's none of those things. Vision is simply the sum total of your life experiences that allows you to see the world in a unique way. Mm-hmm. Vision is simply seeing through your own eyes. And the great news, everyone has a vision. It is simply how you see. After I had discovered my vision, and actually what happened, this is how I discovered my vision. I was photographing the Newport Beach Pier in Southern California, and it was just the pier I was photographing. Long exposure, people were disappearing. And I realized I needed a subject. And I found this homeless man whom I asked if he would stand in my photograph, and he agreed. And his name was Gabriel. And I called the image the Angel Gabriel. And I loved the image. And it was the first time that I had consciously saw the image in my mind and knew what I wanted it to look like. And I was so proud of that image. And I had a mentor at the time, and I took it to her proudly to show her what I had done. I had seen it, I had envisioned it, I had created it. And she looked at the image and said, "Don't center the subject. Cole, I'm always telling you that. Don't center the subject." And I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? This is what I thought it should look like, but here's my mentor. So I went home and tried cropping it differently, several ways, and I hated it. She may have seen it that way or created it that way, but it wasn't her vision, it was mine. And there taught me a great lesson. No matter how expert people might be, there's one thing they can never be expert in: your vision. And so my philosophy is, if you want to be a good photographer, then follow the rules, the common wisdoms, and follow other people's advice. But if you want to be a more creative photographer and you want to love the work that you create, find your vision and learn to see for yourself. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Very good.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Hey, Cole, with that in mind, so what do you think about mentors? Do you recommend people to have mentors, or?
I have never found many mentors who can direct you to find your own vision. So many want to tell you how to do things the way they see. And I've had several of those mentors. And so they teach you how you should see, how you should photograph, what rules you should follow, etc. So I think it's the rare person who can put their views aside and help the person find their own vision and follow that. So if you can find a person like that, that would be wonderful.
Mhm.
What if you
Mhm.
mix and match? You take a little bit of everybody and then you like just make your own mess.
Well, I am really big on seeing for yourself. So I am a person who enjoys finding my own way. So for me, finding it my own way was the best way.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, I just wanted to note really quick. I find it especially fascinating because we've recently been digging deep into that type of thought and process with vision at the Academy of Art. And they talk about your idiosyncrasies, your own personalities, the things that make you you, the experiences that make up, your life to this date, and to kind of dig deep into some of those. So I find it really fascinating. It's hard to discover like what that means and how it translates, but it's definitely something fascinating to look into. Mhm.
Sure.
Okay, we have one question. This is kind of an open question. Chris Bailey asks, can we get Cole or anyone to speak on the how of finding your vision?
Well, when I tried to find my vision, I didn't really understand what the word meant. And I would Google it, how to find your vision. And all I came up with was articles about eyesight. And so no one could really explain it to me with words so that I could understand. So I just came up with 10 steps that I instinctively thought would help me find my vision. I did things like printing out my favorite images and analyzing each one as to finding out what was my photographic personality. And I learned that I love centered images. I love symmetrical images, dark images, contrasty images, blocked black images. That was part of me. So that was a helpful step. I also did things like ask myself, and I think Brooks has talked about this a lot, why do I photograph? What was I trying to get out of my photography? I practiced photographic celibacy. Sorry to bring it up, but I didn't look at other people's work because I was being influenced and I was trying to find out what I wanted to create, how I saw. Anyway, I created these 10 steps and it took me 2 long, hard years. And I think one of the passions I now have in life is to help others find their vision and not take 2 years and not do the struggling that I did. So I do have if I could share it real quick, I do have a link to my 10 steps. And if anybody just snaps a picture of that, it'll take you to an article that I wrote, how I found my vision and the 10 steps. And maybe some of those 10 steps would be helpful to you in finding your vision.
Very good.
I think we can also drop this link in the chat or when we publish this afterwards, because we will publish this video, it's recording, we'll publish it afterwards and we'll include it there as well.
That was so helpful. And you guys have retreats that you do every so often, right? Cole, you and John Barkley.
We just did our first vision retreat here at my home for a week. And it was successful because most of the people came out understanding a little bit about vision and understanding now how to pursue and find theirs. So yeah, we'll do a second one this October as well.
All right. Yeah, I guess a lot of us get lost in the, people say like, you gotta find your style. You gotta have a style. And like, I don't know what my style is. Like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, you have to have a style so people can tell what's your photograph versus somebody else's.
Yeah, I think a style is something I think of that you apply consciously, and I like to have the vision to dictate to me what the style will be for the individual image or individual project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Do we have any more questions, Shonda?
We do not.
All right. So we will take it over to Brooks Jansen.
Okay, thanks. I first have to say we did not coordinate any of us presenting here. We did not coordinate what we were going to talk about tonight. but it's an amazing coordination. Cole talking about vision and Beth talking about be average and allow that to develop over time. And I want to piggyback, particularly on Beth's comments, because she talked about being overwhelmed by the green. And I wasn't going to talk about this, so I'm going to have to wing this just a little bit. But the word that I want to introduce into this conversation is not vision and not pursuit, but rather response. I think the real great challenge for those of us who are photographers is to let go of the idea that we're going to go out and make something spectacular. Instead, what we might think about doing is going out in the world and listening and responding to what it is that we see. And so I have a little project here. Let me turn on my share. Then hopefully I can get this to pop up. Okay. Do you see this now called The Love of Green?
Yes, we do.
Wow.
So a very similar situation to what Beth was
Mhm.
describing, which created this small little PDF project. Once I go through this, then I'll explain about how the PDFs come about and all that kind of stuff. But it starts with this little bit of text. First, the first color she pulled out of her brand new box of crayons was green. Is that your favorite color? I asked. Yes, she replied as she rubbed the crayon across the paper, leaving a trail of mountain meadow. Why do you like green? Because it makes me happy. I understand exactly how she feels. This was my granddaughter, by the way.
Oh.
And so I simply put together that little bit of introductory text to go with a bunch of pictures of green. It's my response to green. So rather than say, well, the green is overwhelming, you just go with it because it speaks to you somehow. And the more I'm involved in photography now for 50 years, the more I have fallen in love with this idea that going out to make art is probably self-defeating to some degree because we start trying to define what art is, which is almost an impossible task. If instead we just go out with the idea that we're going to respond to whatever we find, and what we create is our response to the world, then it completely changes our approach, and it's closer to finding the vision, as Cole talked about, or to allowing yourself to go with the flow, um, to allow yourself to be average, as Beth said, and then transition from there into seeing. So anyway, I just wanted to show that green thing real quick because I thought it was kind of fun. Now, what I really want to talk about tonight, am I still sharing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. What I really want to talk about is structure, because we were challenged to talk about things that have made a difference in our creative life and how we approach creativity and things that have helped. And for me, it has to do with this idea of structure. Now, of course, most of you, if you've heard of me at all, you've probably heard of me through Lenswork because I'm the publisher of Lenswork. But as the publisher of Lenswork, I have a kind of a unique problem in that I'm probably the one photographer in the world that can never get published in anybody's magazine because I'm kind of a competitor of all the other magazines. And so how am I going to get my own personal work out there? Because I was a photographer long before Lenswork, and I'll be a photographer long after Lenswork. And so how do I get my work out there into the world? Well, for me, the key is developing structure. So I created for myself a personal publication called Kokoro, which is Japanese for the heart of the matter, if you will, or the center. Like we say, it comes from the heart. It's that kind of thing. So I published this PDF called Kokoro. I've been doing it for 10 years now. Each issue of Kokoro contains either 4 or 6 projects. And a project might be anywhere from a half a dozen pictures to maybe 20 or 30 pictures. So, but each one of these are sort of my response to the world, my response to whatever I see. So this one called A Good Place to Read, we were visiting some friends in Florida, and they have like 13 leather chairs and unbelievable numbers of bookshelves. And I thought, well, their entire house is a good place to read. So that became a project of just taking pictures in their house of bookshelves and places to read, etc. So Kokoro becomes the structure for me to produce my work. Structure, it's a strange thing about structure, because we're supposed to be creative and free and flexible and adapting to the world and et cetera, et cetera. But if we don't have some sort of structure that helps us rein in our creative possibilities, it becomes too easy to just fly off the handle and end up going nowhere. As Orson Welles said, the great enemy of art is the lack of limitations. And so I think once we develop a structure for how we want to produce our work and what it's going to be, it helps us become more productive because of the structure. It's not less productive. So for me, it's Kokoro. And I've now done, like I say, 10 years worth of these. There's 35 issues of Kokoro that consist of 170 some odd projects. Here's just a few of the projects. And I wanted to show you how that structure led me to this particular one here called Facing the Grand Canyon. So I'd never been to the Grand Canyon. Went to the Grand Canyon, this is several years ago, and this is what I found at the Grand Canyon. Forest fires had come over. We're having it again today. Forest fires had come over and completely engulfed the Grand Canyon. And as a photographer, I looked at that and thought, oh crap. I've finally, after all these years, I've come to the Grand Canyon, and this is what I have to photograph. And as a matter of fact, there was a woman who came up next to me with a tripod and a big Canon camera and a big expensive lens. And she took one look at this and turned to her husband and said, well, this isn't going to work today. Let's go home. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Is my challenge to create or to capture the world in its idealized vision, or is my challenge to respond some way to what I find? And so how do you respond to this? Well, fortunately, we have this new technique called denoise. I don't know if you guys have played with denoise in Lightroom, but I thought, well, maybe that'd help. So that created this. But they're not very interesting colors, and I tried playing around to fix the colors, and it just didn't work. So when that didn't work, I decided, well, what the heck? If I made them black and white, no one will know they're weird colors, and I end up with some pretty nice pictures. Now, in my youth, this is where I would have stopped. I would have said, aha, I have now made a good picture. And of course, when you're in the Grand Canyon, I ended up with 100 different positions, 100 different compositions. One of those is probably the best, that's going to get matted and framed and hung above the fireplace. And the other 99 are going to get forgotten because they weren't the best. But that's not the structure that I had built for myself. And I have a natural aversion, I guess, to that idea that there can only be one best, because I have more than one reaction when I go to a place like this. So I created this project called Facing the Grand Canyon, a suite of questions and reactions. Let me flip over to that PDF. Give me just a minute, if you will. Oh, crap. Okay. And now we should be back. Are you seeing Facing the Grand Canyon? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is one of the PDFs that I created that's my response to this experience. It's one of 4 or 5 or 6 projects that appeared in one of the issues of Kokoro, if that makes sense. So this is my response. Now, notice that a response can also include text. Not always, sometimes doesn't include any text. The green one that I showed you had a little bit of text. This has a little more. The canyon's bigger than life. It's a question, etc. You probably can read that. And then here's some of the pictures. I stood, stare, react, stare again, think, stare, wonder. The canyon changes you. So now we go into, there's actually a number of different chapters. I won't waste your time by taking you through the whole thing. But the first reaction or response that I had to the Grand Canyon is, my God, we humans are tiny, tiny beings in comparison to this huge thing. So from time to time, it's useful to be reminded of our place in the cosmic scale. Here on Earth, we're top species, important beings, the centers of human experience. But see those trees down in the Grand Canyon that look like black dots? Each of those trees are twice as tall as you are. So I'm responding through photography, through emotion, through thought, through questions. Here we come up to the second chapter. It's about verticality. And I explain it's a vertical world, and I don't do very well with vertical heights. You know, I had to really push myself to get to the edge to make these pictures because it's pretty scary stuff. And third chapter, this moment. It's a moment when you're standing there looking at it and the light and the clouds and all of that, but you also realize this is millions of years of stuff that we're looking at that created this Grand Canyon. So that was another response that I had to the Grand Canyon. There are 7 of them in total in this project that are different responses. I'll share. Let me flip to just one more because I love it. This one here. I had simply asked for directions. She was helpful and showed me on the map. I thanked her, and she calmly said, "There are spirits in the canyon, you know," and then smiled. "Really?" I replied. "Oh, yes, they're there." Then she went about her business and left me wondering. And that was on the beginning of the second day that I was photographing the Grand Canyon. And that entire day, I felt those spirits, which I'm sure was nothing more than, you know, her planting a seed in my mind. But my emotional response changed on the second day as a result of her comment. And I could almost sense those spirits that were there. So let me figure out how to get out of sharing. Okay, now I'm back. So the idea that I wanted to get across tonight was, if you can figure out a structure for your artwork that allows you to have responses to the world, then you don't have to worry about creating art. You don't have to worry about the wow factor. You don't have to worry about whether or not it sells or is publishable or what, because what it is a genuine response that you that you produce based on something coming through you. As Anais Nin said, "Do not speak unless spoken through." And that's the challenge of being an artist. And there's lots of ways to do it, but for me, structure is a way that makes my individual responses aggregate together in a way that allows me to share my work more completely and more fully, rather than the individual image. Okay, those are my thoughts.
Fascinating.
Very cool.
Wonderful.
I have a
Wow.
question, Brooks. And please forgive me for being ignorant because haven't read too much, but I know that you do projects in sixes, right?
Yes.
Is this the theory behind that, or is there something else that, you know, where you started the six project?
It came about purely accidentally. I somehow I ran across the idea of the 6-word story. And basically, it's told, I'm assuming this is true, it might be apocryphal, that someone approached Ernest Hemingway in a bar. Ernest Hemingway, famous for writing very short, pithy sentences.
Mhm.
And someone said, I'll bet you can't tell a story in 6 words. And it was like a bar bet. And Hemingway said, of course I can. And the 6-word story he told was baby shoes, for sale, never worn.
Ooh.
I thought, isn't that cool? There is a whole website now. It's about 6-word stories. There's thousands of them. It's very, very interesting to do. But in my brain, it went click. If Hemingway can write a story in 6 images, why can't we do a story in 6 pictures? And so we wanted to publish a book of this, and 6 also worked, to be perfectly honest, because it allowed us to create 3 facing page pairs. So everybody got 6 images who were selected for the book publication. We ended up doing that 4 years in a row. We published a book called
Mhm.
Seeing in Sixes.
Mhm.
But really, when you get right down to it, there's nothing magical about 6 unless you're a publisher. But it could be seeing in 5s or seeing in 7s or seeing in 8s. The 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 emphasis, I think, is seeing in groups rather than as individual images, for the simple reason that when you show someone a group of images, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, whatever it is, uh, they will not look at individual images with the same kind of thumbs up, thumbs down
Hmm.
that you do when you look at, the really spectacular image on Instagram, for example. So you sidestep the thumbs up, thumbs down. And the other thing that fascinates me is everybody knows this is a group, these 6 images or whatever. And so they start looking for the things that make them a group. How do these connect? What's in common? Where are the threads that hold these all together? They start interpreting things in the interstices between the images. And that's a much deeper involvement with looking at a body of work or a piece of artwork, if you will. It's a much deeper involvement than looking at something on the wall and saying, yeah, I really like that one, or no, that I don't like that one.
Mhm.
That's not a very deep response. And so seeing in groups of pictures really gets people involved with your work more deeply and more significantly, I think.
Okay,
Wonderful.
thank you.
We have 2 questions, and I'm going to ask the most recent one first,
Okay.
since we're kind of on this subject. Loretta asks, so in the example of the Grand Canyon,
Mm-hmm.
did you come up with the structure? For example, emotions first, then attach the image, or did you see the image, then attach the emotion?
Yeah, in my work, it works both ways in different projects. In the Grand Canyon, it happened that I was just photographing without the text, without the emotions, without the division into chapters. I was just responding, composing, and photographing, having no idea what I was going to do with it. But that's a strategy that I refer to as gathering assets. I don't go out in the world, generally speaking, to create something that I've preconceived. Instead, I just go out into the world and respond. And the Grand Canyon is just, it's just so overwhelming that my response was huge. I only had 2 days, but I still made about 1,000 photographs. And so what do you do with that? Well, you start editing down and thinking about which ones hold together. And the more I started thinking about that, the more I started thinking about my various responses to the Grand Canyon, and then I started getting the text together about how tiny we beings are, and how vertical it is, and etc. Like I say, I think there's 7 chapters in that. So that ends up being a fairly sizable project. It's got 30 or 40 images in it in these 7 chapters. But all of that thought and all of that text came later back in the studio when I was starting to work with the images to see what I could do with them.
And one more question.
Mhm.
You can answer this, Brooks, or if anybody else has a recommendation. The question is, since we're on the color green today, Frank says, I often end up with tones that are not natural looking. Are there any suggestions on processing greens?
Shoot in black and white.
Yeah, that's fine. The other, my response would be, why do you think it's important that a camera make a perfect copy of what you see? You're making artwork. The camera is not a Xerox copy machine. It's a tool for you to interpret the world emotionally, and so who cares if it's accurate?
Love it.
Wonderful. Okay, that's all we have right now.
Okay. This was fun.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
has been.
Well, before we go, we want to remind everybody that our discount codes expire in 2 days. So go on over and get your tickets. After that, it's full price. But yeah. Shanda, do you have any other announcements?
I don't. Just come on down to Durango, here where I'm at. It's beautiful right now. It's spring. It's beautiful in fall. We'd sure love to have you come out and join us at the photography conference. As you can see today, there's so many bits and pieces of information and inspiring, not just inspiring lessons, but tidbits of information that you can add to your own photography journey. You're just seeing a little bit of example here today. It's incredible. So we'd love to have you join us in October here in Durango.
It's gonna be amazing.
Can you put the code in the
too.
Can you put the code in the chat real quick before folks disappear?
Well, I mean, there's a Derek 100, a Cole 100, a Brooks 100, but Horizons 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Whichever
figured you just
want.
put the, yeah. No pressure, but Beth 100. No.
And we are really grateful for you guys for giving us your time and all your wisdom. We really do appreciate it. And we thank you. And then this is recorded and it's going to be on our blog in a few days.
Isn't it going to be fun to get together with people who are three-dimensional?
Right?
It is.
Oh.
Seems like since COVID, we've all been two-dimensional, vaporware.
Except, you know, the only problem is that when Shanda and I here look kind of like the same, when we're together, she's like this tall and I'm like this
super tall.
So I need like super high heels.
But yeah, there's something special about meeting people in person. It's fantastic, and we look forward to it.
And we can look at prints.
Yes.
What a concept.
Right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
And New Mexico Fine Art is actually going to be there with about 20-foot section of incredible images as well. So we have a lot going on. Yeah.
And our photo expo, with all our sponsors.
All right. Thank you, Dave, for being here. Thank you, Pictureline. Thank you, everybody, for everything. We truly appreciate it.
Dave and Derek, nice to meet you.
Thank you
See
so
Beth,
much.
see you, Brooks.